Another beautiful South Carolina day. I heard on the way over from down the street that it's 96 and feels like 107. Is that right? Joe, you always got to answer that kind of stuff. That's a lot. Well, thank you for coming. We had a good year last year. We will have a better year this year. It is 2027 is going to be great. Things are coming our way. We've learned as far as advanced manufacturing, particularly automobiles, we're writing the book on that every day, and we have inquiries all the time for the sophisticated things that we're teaching and training at our technical college system. That's really the key to what makes us, one thing that makes us so different from other places. If you look at those courses, look at the skills, look how quickly we can put it together. And we are the only state in the country that has a legitimate and big, powerful program. We call it Ready SC, where we will teach, train people, our people here, or others that are coming in, mostly ours here. That's why these manufacturers come here, because of the people. You know, they call us a handshake state. Nobody else has that designation. But I think Wisconsin and maybe North Carolina have small programs like ours, but we will train the workers. If they have the aptitude, we'll train them for these manufacturers and these businesses, new ones coming in or those expanding here at no cost. And nobody else does that on a routine basis and as well as we do, and that makes an enormous difference. But that's in manufacturing, all those kinds of high skill jobs, and that is a reflection of the strength of our technical college system. I'm going to focus, I'll talk about a few of these things and answer your questions. The budget is for $43.9 billion. That's state, federal, and all revenues from all sources. It's about a third from Medicaid program, comes from the federal government. Another third from fines, fees, tuition, gas taxes, and we call them other funds, things that are tuitions, things that are designated to go to certain places. And then from tax, sales tax, and income tax, that's where our share that I refer to as $14 billion, that's where that comes from. So that's a big budget, and it's always growing, and fortunately we've had surplus after surplus, which means that we're doing things right. And of course our budget, just for those who have not thought of this, the national debt right now I think is going on $40 trillion. That's something like $140,000 for every American that we owe to banks and people through bonds, all those kind of things, where we borrow the money. We have a balanced budget, required by the Constitution. So we don't have that problem, and in fact, we actually have surpluses. This year, the General Assembly adopted about 92% of the proposals that I made for this budget. That is a remarkable number. We were trying to think when, if ever, it has reached that level, and we're really not sure, but we know that that's a lot. But that tells something about the way that we're working in this government. And it's those words I use all the time. You all have heard: communicate, collaborate, and cooperate. Don't operate by surprise. Get ideas, talk to people, listen to ideas, legislators, agencies, and you generally will come up with a good idea. And I think that's reflected with so much of what my office proposed in this budget is actually in this budget, 92%. One thing that shows the good strength is the fact that 83% of our prime age workforce, and those are individuals between the ages of 25 and 54, are either employed or actively seeking employment, and that's the highest such number in the Southeast. And the Southeast is growing. Other states, other parts of the country are hurting. We've cut taxes. That's one reason we're growing. People can spend their money, and we try to be as efficient and careful with the rest. In 2017, the top marginal tax rate was 7%. This year, with this budget, we're going down to 5.21%. That is great news for everybody. We're also giving money back, or not taking money from homeowners. We're increasing the homestead exemption from $50,000 on your value of your home to $75,000. That's going to help. We are real proud of what we've done with teachers in education. 8 years ago, the minimum starting salary of a teacher in our state was $30,113. Now, with this budget, it's going up $50,500. I think the average salary, or maybe it's the starting salary average, anyway, it's up around $65,000. That's good news. It's us even counting inflation. That's gone up a whole lot. So that is real good news. It shows that we're putting our money where it's important. Another thing you've heard over and over every year is about the school resource officers. You can remember there were times we've had incidents where children were hurt in schools, were assaulted in schools. Well, in 2017, as a starting point, we had 406 full-time school resource officers. These are trained, armed, certified, uniformed officers in school all day. They don't come and go. They're there all the time. They don't need to be called to the school because they're already at the school. And troublemakers know they're at the school. In school year 25-26, there were 1,181, up from 406. We have a total of 1,284 public schools, so we're just under 100 short. And that's not because we haven't funded it. The money is there, they just can't find the right officers to come in and work in those schools. We also invested in early childhood education. One way, of course, is a full day, 4-year-old kindergarten. We're now expanding that. The budget adopts my recommendation to expand the program in private providers. They have to be 3 times the poverty rate. But why private provider? It's because the public schools don't have room, so we'll have to build some more. But in the meantime, we're opening it up more to private providers, and that's going to help a lot of children. Also, the Parental Choice Education Scholarship Trust Fund, it has money in it. Also, we've frozen college tuition for now is the 7th year. And we've also have something new with the Meeting Street Scholarship Fund, which is private individuals putting money into that, millions of dollars. And the state is putting in $18.7 million in lottery revenues, and this is for academically prepared, that is, good students who are below that poverty or Pell Grant eligible, which takes them down into the poverty level. Conservation is a big thing. We understand it's important, not only for recreation, not only for good health, not only because of the satisfaction that it provides to tourists and others, but it is important that we preserve and conserve the historic, pristine, significant properties around the state, and we're putting money into that in this budget. We recently protected 62,000 acres in the PD, which is, we think, the largest such easement in history. That brings us up to, I think we'll soon be over 400,000 acres just in the last few years, with more coming, and also putting money for mitigation projects. One thing about roads, when I came in 2017, just a point of comparison, we had about $2.7 billion out for roads being worked, being built, being widened. Right now we have about $7 billion out, and active projects underway all around the state. That's an improvement. I asked for about 1.1 billion in this budget, and the legislature did provide 377 billion out of like more, but we'll take it and we'll squeeze it and we'll keep going and go faster as fast as we can. Law enforcement, we've raised salaries for state officers. We fixed the officers' retirement system so those who've retired can come back and earn up to $80,000 without reducing their retirement benefits. And why that's important is we have a lot of men and women that start off pretty young, and by the time they get to retirement age, they still have a lot of law enforcement left in them. So we want to keep them in as long as we can. As long as they're able to work and doing a good job and willing, we'll do it. Electric power is something that we are very serious about, and we need more. We need to be careful. My administration, our policy is for nuclear. We believe it's efficient, it's safe, and it outproduces all the others for the cost. So we need to grow our power, and as you know, we have an active project going on right now with memos of understanding to see what we can do with the 2 reactors that were not finished up at VC Summer. We are leading with all that we've done with our technology and innovation hubs. We're one of 12 in the country that won that from the U.S. Department of Commerce. With what we've done in past years has set us in a position now to lead this nuclear renaissance in the United States. And we intend to do it because that's where you get the most power for the input, is clean and is safe. One thing about I want to mention about the earmarks, and that's where one of my vetoes is, and that is the legislature. As you know, the Scout project was over budget by about $150 million. It wasn't because of anything Scout did, but the state had contracts and obligations with all the contractors to build that place, and we have about $150 million in overruns. Well, that needs to be paid. That's work that has been done, or work that is under contract to be done, and we must pay those to whom the state has obligated itself. We must see that money gets there. So the legislature has imposed a condition on that, and that is before that money is paid, that the Legislative Audit Council needs to inquire about why we have a shortfall, and then the legislature will vote on whether to pay those bills. Well, that's not the way to do business. If you enter into a contract that somebody has done the work, or they bought the equipment to do the work, or they've already started it part of the way through, if we have a contract, an obligation to them, then we got to keep it. We can't say, well, something happened, we had a cost overrun, so we're not going to pay you. It had nothing to do with the cost overrun. Scout had nothing to do with the cost overrun. So that I'm going to veto that proviso. I think it's bad business policy. It hurts our reputation as a handshake state where people can depend on us, and the money needs to be paid. We can still have the inquiry. We can still go back, although the Commerce Secretary and others, everyone has discussed and testified about what happened. You know, there was a 5-month delay in the project due to an environmental question, and that's costly. But we owe the money, and we contracted to do it, and we have to pay it. So that's why I'm vetoing that. And there's another one about the town of Pacolet, where town of Pacolet received funds for a project in Pacolet. I don't remember what it was right offhand, but the money was not never made it to where it's supposed to go. I think it was stolen or used in some the wrong fashion. And there's a proviso that would can't and the grant to the town provided if the project didn't get completed, then the money would have to be refunded. Well, the project wasn't completed because the money went to unauthorized sources or was stolen. And so the project did not get done and will not get done. And this proviso would cancel that obligation, that contractual obligation to pay the money back to the state. Well, that's a bad precedent. That's a bad policy. I hate that they didn't get the project done, but the state cannot cancel a debt, cannot cancel an obligation like that. If we were to begin doing that, I imagine there'd be a lot of them all over from A to Z that over time would be seeking forgiveness and cancellation of debts. So those are the main vetoes I have. But I think, again, going back to the beginning, I think we're making real progress. We've had a cooperative attitude over the years. It's strong. Our state is viewed by others, people around the world, as a marvelous place to be, and that's one reason we have a lot of people, when they reach retirement age, have the resources, they want to come be in South Carolina. That often a lot of us take for granted. Well, they don't. And it's a beautiful place. It's unique. And I think with good leadership, with our great people, I think the future is very bright for our state. Does anyone have an easy question? Joe? Beg your pardon. Yeah. I don't know that we got to that point, but probably a lot of them we did get some information. We started doing that, started asking for information, and it's worked pretty well. And there's some good ones in there. There's some very good ones in there. But earmarks are not, that's not the way, that is not the way to run a government. What I've suggested, and I think a lot of the legislators agree, that the best practice would be simply for the agencies perhaps to have hearings, for the towns and cities to make decisions and send in to the various agencies that would be involved in implementing that decision, what they would like done, and to put a price tag on it. And eventually that information can be given to the legislature, and they can provide grants to those agencies to have public hearings and make decisions on which ones to grant and which ones not to. The whole thing would be out in the open. Everybody would know about it, and there would be no opportunity for anything to be hidden from discussion. That's the way it ought to be. The old days of earmarks, where a bunch of legislators and others would simply say, we want to send this money there and this money there, where the agency hadn't even asked for it, wasn't even planning on it, didn't even want it. And then someone would call up and say, by the way, of that X number of dollars, half of that goes to this project over here. Never been any public discussion, never been any opportunity for anybody to examine the merits or demerits of the program. We can't do it that way. That's these people's money that we're taking from them. And if it's going to go to any project, whatever that project is, whatever that thing is, some are probably don't have much merit. Others may have lots of merit. In any event, the decision ought to be made public because it's the citizens' money. A lot of them don't have any money to spare. Some do have some money to spare, but in any event, it ought to all be public, ought to be completely transparent. Well, one of them is going to be getting rid of these earmarks. That's something that has to be done. because it's not good policy. But we're continuing to grow. We've got to have power, electric power. Now, our state is situated better than any other to lead the way on this. I call it, and it is called around the world, a nuclear renaissance, because we've set up over the years, we've set up with institutions, the Savannah River sites there. We're familiar with. We have 7 nuclear reactors at 4 different plants, and that produces about 60% of our energy. I think maybe Pennsylvania produces more, a larger percentage than we do, and maybe some other state. But we are nuclear ready. We understand it, and we understand how powerful it is. But we have to keep that going. We also have to worry about the farmland. That's why we had easements for farmland for historical purposes. That is, you put your farm in a conservation, you get an easement there, and it'll be maintained, because our land, undeveloped land, is going too fast. Now we need to develop a lot more things. Our cities are going to grow, but right now I think there are about 1.2 million acres within city limits. That is, I call that the concrete and asphalt and buildings. And we have about 4.7 million, I think, of farmland, and maybe about 11 million that are forests, and there may be some overlap there. We have it's over maybe getting close to 3.3 million that have conservation easements of some kind on them. We need to do more of that, because we have priceless and precious natural places here that are good for everyone's health. They're good for tourism. They're good for everything, and we need to protect that. That's going to be a challenge. I think that of all that acreage, national parks, state parks, there's no reason why we can't think of setting aside about half of our acreage for perpetuity, whether it's in farmland or parks or forests. And there are all sorts of agreements that can be made, public and private, to do that. We have a few things that we're working on right now. Some people with some land want the state to have it, or want conservation easements put on it. That's something that we really have to work on. Probably the main thing is education. We've got to do more. We've got to be sure that our young people are the best and brightest. I believe in history and by nature, I think we're at the top of the stack. But I tell you something, the other day, we've had a group that Danny Elsie, the Workforce and Development, put together a couple of years ago, where we get very bright high school students who are chosen by their teachers, I believe, to come be in a program where they study for a few days with state government. And they come to this building, they come to my office, go to different agencies, and really get a good view of how the government works. And that sort of understanding helps people learn. Well, Walter Edgar's history book is the single greatest source of such South Carolina information as any I know of. So for a few years, I've been giving them away to people for various reasons. Do a little autograph or something on there, a little note. Well, I had, I think it was 12 of those very thick, nice books, and I wrote out something for each one on there. Used a good pen and very careful with my handwriting, so I wanted to be sure it looked presentable. And gave them to them, and they were happy. They were flipping through. We had the ceremony there in the office, and they were delighted to get it, and they were just beaming. Well, I found out after it was over, we walked out in the hall, many of them could not read the inscription because it was cursive. Now that strikes me as a problem. Because you wonder, you wonder, you have to know the digital world, of course. But the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, a lot of old letters and things, and just people generally communicating, right? So they write in cursive. That was an indication to me that we got to do some more thinking in a lot of areas. Well, I think we're growing on our own without newcomers coming in, although we do have a lot of newcomers coming. But as far as tax breaks go, you can't give a tax break about everything. But there's some things that are more equal than others, as they say. But these seniors, most of seniors, and been in their homes for a long time, they've paid a lot of taxes. They've done the work. A lot of them come up the hard way. A lot of them didn't have any help, but they made it. They were disciplined, they worked, and I think that's one that is worth giving. It went from $50,000 to $75,000, $25,000. I think we can afford that. And whether we can give everybody who can't afford a house their first house, I don't know if that's the right answer. I think a better answer would be scholarships. Just what I just said. Those things: power, education, and protection, historic, natural, and cultural places. Just general. Well, you always think you could have done something better, of course, or something a little different. But I've been satisfied with the work with the people and with the legislature. We haven't had fights like they do in some places. That's because I've known a lot of them for a number of years. But if you communicate, collaborate, and cooperate, it's almost becoming trite, because I say it all the time. But it works like a charm. People don't like surprises. People like to have their voices heard, and sometimes I've been dead wrong when the other folks were dead right. But you have to listen. You have to get along with people. Fighting doesn't do any good, and that makes headlines and might get you some votes and might lose you some, but that's not the reason you ought to be fighting. Thank you very much.